And now to the situation in Ukraine. Russian troops continue to mass along the border of Ukraine. U.S. officials now say there are close to 50,000 of them there. They say those troops show all the elements of combat power. On Friday, Russian President Putin called President Obama and said he wanted to work to reduce tensions. Yesterday, the Russian Foreign Secretary or Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the Russians had, in his words, no intention of invading Ukraine. Well, he and Secretary of State Kerry are going to meet later today in Paris. David Ignatius of the Washington Post is with us this morning. David, I can't remember a Sunday morning when we started out covering so many different stories, such different stories, but all of them of great significance. Let me ask you first, what do you make of this phone call that Putin he called the president on Friday and said he wanted to talk about this situation in Ukraine. I know you've been on this story all weekend. What do U.S. officials make of this?
It's tempting to see this as a blink on Putin's part. Putin is poised on the border of eastern Ukraine, but the idea of actually attacking is pretty risky for Putin. He would encounter resistance from Ukrainian troops this time, which he did not in Crimea. There's the prospect of having to fight a long partisan battle against Ukrainians who feel strongly about their nation. So it appears from what Putin has said that he thinks it's time to at least begin a round of diplomatic talks to see if there's some balanced middle ground solution. President Obama has a very delicate task here. He wants to invite that conversation, but maintain the position that what Russia has done in seizing the Crimea is unacceptable as a violation of the international order. There are formulas that have been floated the last 3 days about what the talks later today in Paris between Secretary Kerry and Foreign Minister Lavrov might involve. There are things like federalization of the Ukraine. There are things like perhaps implicit promises from Ukraine, maybe explicit, that it doesn't seek to join NATO. I think the U.S. would like to keep the door open for the Ukraine joining the European Union, but maybe not NATO.
Do you think he's dialing back a little or wants to dial back a little?
You can't say that he's dialing back as long as all those troops are on the border, threatening to come across and really destabilize the situation. But Putin's come right up to the edge of a very volatile conflict in Europe, and I think he's wondering whether it's time to step back a little bit and see if he can gain diplomatically enough that he can de-escalate the crisis.
You know, Scott Pelley had what I thought was a very interesting interview with the president when he was in Rome, and the president speculated on what he thought was motivating Putin. Here's part of what he said.
I think he's been willing to show a deeply held grievance about what he considers to be the loss of the Soviet Union. You would have thought that after a couple of decades that there'd be an awareness on the part of any Russian leader that the path forward is not to revert back to the kinds of practices that were so prevalent during the Cold War, but in fact to move forward.
What did you make of the president's comment?
I thought it was a first-rate interview. It's worth seeing in its entirety. But in the clip that you showed, President Obama, I thought, was trying to do something that I just heard Henry Kissinger at a private gathering at Yale say, which is that it's crucial for statesmen to try to see the world as their adversaries see it. And in that comment about the deeply held grievance that motivates Putin, I thought Obama was trying to do that. And the trick is to understand your adversary, but maintain your demands that your adversary behave in a responsible way. So I think that little piece, if Putin watched it, he would say, here's an American president who's at least trying to understand the way I see the world.
If he reacts to things the way we in the West react to them,
that's
and
the
of course
puzzle with
that's the
Putin.
part we don't know. But at least they're talking, and so we'll see what comes of
yes.
that. We'll come back to this, David, and we're going to be back in 1 minute on a totally different subject. Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, the ruling body of college athletics, is going to be here to talk about what could be a groundbreaking ruling for college sports.